Hello and welcome everyone today to the resume roast session, and it is hosted by GDSC and IEEE in collaboration. So this is the first time we're doing it together. And as we start the resume roast session, it's just a warm welcome to all the panelists. We have our 7 panelists, and I'll be introducing them one by one. So yeah, the first one, as you can see, is Bimal Patel, and then Ritika Saraswat, Hasnain Heather, Isaac Thomas, Ivan Tanuchjada, sorry if I spelled that wrong, Matador Tulo, Abdullah Kublai, Eliston A, and Corbin Jarrett. And now, one by one, I think all the panelists are welcome to give their introductions. So yes, if you could just start with your introduction, that would be great.
Okay, so my name's Bimal. I work at Synopsys. I've been working here for about 17 years. I've been a manager for over 10 years, so I look at a lot of resumes and usually under a lot of pressure to get through a lot of resumes. So this is an interesting exercise for me. Yeah, looking forward to hearing what people's feedback is. That's it for me.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Thank you. I would request if Ritika is here, if she could introduce herself.
Yeah, for sure. Apologies for the delay as well. It's a weekday, so but jumping into myself. So my name is Ritika, as you all know. I am originally from India, moved to Canada 6.5 years ago. Moved in when I moved in, I started my journey on the classic route of most international students, which was working on multiple part-time jobs, working at pizza places, etc. Eventually realized that that's not the path made for me or any other immigrant. So found myself starting my own company to kind of figure that path out. And today we have a community of 100,000 international students and immigrants across North America who are part of that community. At the same time, just through networking, leveraging personal branding, and by surrounding myself with the right people, I was able to land a job at all the top 4 consulting firms 1.5 to 2 years before graduating, and decided to choose Deloitte as the first place to start. And that's how the journey has been. And I continue it by advocating for other immigrants and international students, especially those who come from non-traditional backgrounds like myself, because I was a science kid and got into consulting with zero traditional experience in the business space. So happy to be here and excited to kind of share insights and feedback.
Great. Thank you so much, Ritika. We're just going to take a 2-minute break, and we're just setting up the audio again. So I think you were good, but just setting up the audio. So it's going to take 2 more minutes, and then we'll continue with the next introduction for the panelists. Okay. Yeah, we are good to start with Hasnain Heather. If you wanna, okay, he's present in person and he can just introduce himself for once, like, yeah, from here.
Yeah, hello everyone. Yeah, thanks for having me. I am a security professional. I've been in this field since 2018 now, and I am a founder of a company certified with it's an edtech startup. We train people on cloud security, software engineering, and stuff. And apart from that, I work as a senior cloud security engineer at Pacer. Yeah, so I can pretty much answer all your questions related to cloud security, cybersecurity, DevOps. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So moving forward, we have the next panelist, Zach Thomas.
Hello. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi. So my name is Isaac Thomas. I'm a 3rd-year computer engineering student at McMaster. I'm currently on my co-op term right now. I'm also working at Synopsys. So me and Bimal are in the same office actually right now. So I'm currently doing firmware for PCIe 6 and 7, specifically working on the SerDes, which is a serializer, deserializer. Yeah, so I'm doing a 16-month co-op, and I know how tough it is these days landing a co-op, so hopefully I can offer some insight in that aspect. Also, I was the computer chapter chair and computer chapter vice chair in previous years, so it's good to see Om and Nikolai taking over now, and it seems like they're doing a great job. Yeah, that's about it from me.
Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. And moving forward, we have Ivan Tanujda, if he's here. Seems like he has not joined yet. So we'll be moving forward with Matato Tulo. Seems like he's not here either. Okay, Abdullah Kibulwai.
Abdullah Keblawi. But thank you
Yeah,
for
sorry.
trying. Well, I'm a graduate of McMaster at a later age. I graduated from Mohawk College 20-ish years ago. I later joined McMaster at the night program for Bachelor of Technology, graduated from there. I actually graduated.
I know, like we're still setting it up. I don't know if it was working till before, but what's wrong? Really apologies for that, but we're trying to fix it right now. Sorry, yes, go ahead.
Am I good to go?
Yeah, you're good to go.
Okay. So I've been in the software industry for over 20 years now. I've been a manager for about 8, with GeoTap for the last 3. I was a professor at Mohawk College part-time. And again, I graduated from McMaster, and I'm kind of happy to come back and give you guys some advice. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I guess we'll get the roasting going soon.
Sounds good. And do we have a lesson A here?
Can you hear me okay? All right. I'll take that as a yes.
Sorry, could we like ask you to just speak up again? Just after 1 minute, we're gonna connect the HDMI to the new laptop. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, just 1 second.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right, this is better. All right, we're gonna continue now. I believe Elston, you were introducing yourself?
Yeah, I can go ahead. Hey, I'm Elston. I'm a new grad or recent grad from McMaster University. I graduated in 2023. Wait, 2024. Wait, no, I just graduated, sorry. Anyway, so previously was doing my bachelor's of engineering in electrical engineering, went through multiple co-ops, so went for mainly electrical hardware design. So Kepler communication, did stuff on satellites. Then I went to test at TenseTorrent, which was doing AI hardware. And then this was also post-silicon, either scripting, also doing hardware design. Then I went to Tesla and I did board design, more looking at how we're doing things for large scale electrical integration / manufacturing and also electrical design. And then after that, I went to Verkada, where did about 4 months looking at making new products, understanding the whole product design cycle. How do you basically go from product requirements and then basically be able to say, okay, we can sell this product and we have a kind of a launch date. From there, those were my internships, and then I eventually ended up actually signing on to SpaceX, and I was fully ready to go, and then last minute I reneged SpaceX for Apple. So a fun story there. If anybody has the time and wants to hear me talk about it, we'll do probably the one-on-ones or something afterwards. But here I am at Apple, and it's been about 4 or 5 months. So kind of just happy to kind of give back to the community. And I also have some kind of valuable input, being one of the electrical leads on one of the engineering teams at McMaster. So I've also seen hundreds of resumes and understand exactly that barrier between understanding how you get experience in order to get experience.
Yeah. Sorry, guys.
Sounds great. We're gonna move with the next panelist.
All right. Sorry about the technical difficulties, guys, but we should be good now. All right, we can move on to. Sorry, you guys see this one? Yeah. Corbin, I believe this is our final panelist, so you can go ahead if you're here. Maybe he's online. Shit. Okay, I don't think Corbin was able to make it. So in that case, I think we can just move on.
Yeah, we can maybe check if the previous one that we missed is here.
Okay, who did we miss?
Is Ivan here? The third year, no?
Sam's not here now?
7?
Oh,
okay.
You're good.
And Mateo as well?
Is Mateo here?
Okay.
Oh,
So do we have Mateo here? If he could introduce himself. It's not. Oh, wait.
No, he's here. I think he's just getting ready with his mic.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about coming late. I don't know, I had a brain fart and I thought this event was happening in 1 hour. So I'm still at work, but I will at least do my due diligence and join the meeting and introduce myself here and help out. So yeah, hi everyone. Could you actually go to my slide, I guess, with my face?
Yeah, we're there.
Oh, okay. Oh, I think it's stuck on me for me. Anyways, yeah, hi, my name is Mateo. Currently I am a software engineer at Microsoft. I just joined, guess a month ago. Recently graduated from McMaster in computer engineering and society. Yeah, and I'm excited to, I guess, be helping people out with their resumes today.
All right, thanks, Mateo. That's everyone. We're gonna move on to the resume roasting in a second. We're just gonna continue figuring out our technical difficulty. I think we're good.
Oh, it's your laptop. That's sure. So, can you
go to the call? Okay.
I don't know where to go. How do you go to the Zoom call?
Okay, you know what? Okay, let me just share from here. Let me just share my screen.
You gotta select it.
Sorry, am I still unmuted, by the way?
Yeah, you're still unmuted.
Yep.
Could you? I can't. On the proper laptop.
Can you see the
But
video
yeah.
now?
Sorry?
Can those on Zoom see the resume?
Yes.
All right.
So I think the
Oh,
first,
Can
yeah.
you ask it?
Can you just like zoom in and do like section by section?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's a good point.
So I think the first panelist is Bimal Patel. If you could start with his critique on it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I made a couple of notes on this. So I'll start. I made some I have some comments about the format and the content to give you a quick introduction on how I look at resumes. I usually look for experience first. So if there isn't experience, like as in this case, I think there's not related experience or engineering related experience, I'd probably jump to the projects section. I think the project section in this case should be on the first page, right? So that's the relevant section that would get this person hired. And so it would be good to either shorten the summary, which is right at the top and it's a multiple lines long, or something like the high school, the high school experience can be condensed, right? Yeah, you know, in order to get to university, everyone's been to high school. It's good. These things are good. STEM, the entrance academic average, and the awards, right? So these aren't bad things, but maybe that can be condensed. So I think that's the first thing, which is making sure that the things that are going to get you hired are highlighted, right? And in this case, in this example, it would be the projects. Next item I would put is or I would want to highlight is the metrics. There's some good examples here in that the person put, for example, under experience, under camp counselor, they were responsible for 10 plus campers for 50 hours a week, and they hosted robotic camps for 60 plus underprivileged children. So that led 50 plus peers. So that those putting actual numbers down gives context as to how big your project was. It'd be for related projects, it'd be good to quote lines of code or team size, things like that, right? And add efficiency improvements where possible, right? In the project example, there were some good examples of that where the resume writer wrote the accuracy of their implementation. So numbers really help. It puts context and reality to the claim or to the experience, right? Going down to the and to give an example of something that could have been made better, if you go right to the bottom, sorry, I'm jumping around quite a bit. But the very last line says review budgets. First of all, that should be reviewed budgets. That should be in past tense. And then and so I realize that's a minor point and not quite what we're talking about, but at the same time, it shows a attention to detail that's important. So some hiring managers will definitely key in on that lack of attention to detail and filter accordingly. But reviewed budgets for multiple clubs and then provided recommendations. It'd be great to provide a metric there to say the budget recommendations reduce the budget by 20% or something of that nature, to understand, was it a recommendation that saved $1 or was it a recommendation that had, significance to it, right? So that's the second point about metrics and specificity. Sorry. Going back right to the top, please. Sorry to make you root around. I find this is my opinion. I'd like to hear the other panelists' opinion. I find this summary quite long. In general, I'd like to see a short summary of what the person is looking for, if they're looking for hardware or software, if they're looking for something applied, or if they're looking for something research-based, right? So that's the first thing. I find this long, so it can either be shortened or it can be made point form if there are multiple points to be made. This one is very strange because in the third sentence, or second sentence, it refers to the candidate in the third person. So it says, Zachary exemplifies exceptional interpersonal communication skills. That's a bit strange to me. It seems that it either shows, again, a lack of attention to detail, or it shows someone else actually wrote this, right? This is chat GPT generated, or someone else wrote it. So that I found that confusing. It's good to back up things like leadership, interpersonal communication skills, though many resumes have that, right? But it's good to give a specific example of where that is, or at least have that ready in an interview situation if it gets that far. Let's see what else I had here. Yeah, so again, these points can be point form or they can be condensed. For some positives, I did appreciate the personal touches in the resume. So there were some, I mentioned this hosted robotics camp for 60+ underprivileged children. They mentioned their hockey and they mentioned public speaking. Those are just 3 examples of things they've done that makes them, a well-rounded, good person, right? Which again, it depends on the hiring manager, but that I believe that is a very positive thing. And then last thing here is I'd suggest adding links to GitHub or websites where possible to show real implementation. So if things are publicly available, a link to the code is very useful. It again puts reality to the project and lets us look in detail. So that was my feedback.
Sounds great. I think, Dale, you have given a good feedback, and the panel is open to other panelists as well if they would like to add on any critiques to their same resume before we move on to the next resume.
Yeah, does anyone have any quick points they want to point out for this first resume? We are running a little bit low on time, so we're gonna move on.
I put my hand up, but I guess
yeah, sure.
Yeah, you can go ahead, no worries.
All right. So I wanted to bring your attention to how Bimal looked at this resume and bring you to real life. The reality is we're going to be scanning this resume as fast as we can to get to the next one. And we're going to be looking for things that are important that pop out very quickly. And we may not go through the resume the way you expect us to go through it. We may start in the middle, jump to the bottom, go back to the top. Like I said, if I look at the summary and it looks too long to read, I'm going to skip that summary and jump to the next section. So try to keep that in mind as you're writing the resume. Try your best to try to keep us guided within the rails that you've established. And like you said, putting experience at the top is important. We get that you're not applying to this job unless you're educated. If you put your education at the very end, we're just going to check a box to say you've got the education, right? So try to organize your resume in such a way to make it easy for the person reading it to get what's important very quickly. That's my feedback.
Thank you very much for that. We're going to move on to the next resume. right. So who's
Yeah, it's Ritika Saraswat. If she could start her critique on it, and really appreciate the previous feedbacks from both
yeah, thank you very
people.
much.
Perfect. Okay, sounds good. So I think in my opinion, I am looking at the resume as we are in this session right now because I thought there's no use looking at it beforehand. Why I say is because to what Abdullah mentioned previously, on average, a recruiter or anyone who's looking through your resume is going to be spending 7 seconds to look through it. They actually say between 3 to 7. It really depends on the company, how big they are, and how many applications they have coming in that determines that. I think first things off, also to just preface, what I've been involved in is more on like a industry agnostic recruitment side of things, right? So whether it be specific to a technical role or not, things that I'm going to be highlighting are going to be things that are going to be relevant to every person applying to any industry. First things off, I think it's very important at the top. I think this is not a format that I've usually seen companies prefer. I would really recommend something a lot more similar to the previous format that was there in the previous resume. If you can please just stay on the top. Something very similar to the previous format where I think you have your name on the top in the middle and then you have a hyperlink to your LinkedIn profile, a hyperlink maybe to your portfolio or the website as Bimal also mentioned previously, and then I think having some sort of contact information, maybe like an email ID as well, and all of those should be hyperlinked. It's not that you're copy pasting the link and putting that in, so that's one thing I would definitely recommend. I think the second piece is I think it mentions senior Android developer, like the role or the title of the job maybe they're applying for. I would not mention that in. I don't think that's needed. I think an employer very clearly knows why you're applying to that job and for which specific position through the area that you put in your application in. Secondly, in terms of professional summary, I think this is a piece where I would say there's a big debate in terms of whether it should be a part or not. I honestly, at least from working with a lot of the MNCs like Deloitte, the KPMGs, the EYs, the McKinseys, what I could tell is we don't usually prefer professional summaries to be included at all because I think it takes up quite a bit of space in the resume, which I think could be a space that's better utilized mentioning other information. And I think a lot of this professionally summary pieces today comes through you reaching out to people, connecting with them on LinkedIn, networking with them ahead of time. And I think the purpose of you hyperlinking your LinkedIn profile is so that people can first go there, check out and get more understanding about who you are as a person, and then validate your credentials and credibilities by looking at your resume. On average, about 85% of recruiters first go to your LinkedIn and view that, than going through your resume. So that's one of the other things that I would mention. So I would omit that. In terms of work experience, I did realize there's only like one, like it's the title is called work experience in itself. What I have usually found to be very effective, and I think in their case it makes sense, but usually it's always good to break down your experience into different types. So under work, like under experiences, I'll usually have work experience, then leadership or project experience, volunteer experience as well, just so that it showcases your diversity of experience types to someone. I think that plays an important role too. But I think so that's one piece. The second piece within the experience section is you have to really make sure there is a lot of, you are quantifying your experiences. Right now, for each of these experiences mentioned here, there are very few quantifiers mentioned, which makes it very difficult for an employer or a recruiter to see the ROI, right? So let's say, for example, if you are going to get paid through that particular job $80,000 a year, me as an employer, I want to be able to calculate in my head, how can you be providing value to me, whereby maybe I can make in return $100,000 or more. I'm just putting an example out there, right? And the only way you can be able to make that quantification is if someone has given you metrics and evidences of how successfully have you done it in the past and what are the type of outcomes you have created for your previous employers. Currently, I don't see that here, right? So for me, even though these experiences are extraordinary, and maybe in many capacities, I don't see what's the actual impact that came out of these. I'm not even clear if all of these were, some of these were project experiences versus were these actual work experiences where you worked full time or on a co-op. So I think it's very important to also call those pieces out so that it's very clear to someone what capacity you worked in with the other individual. So that's one thing I would change. I think for this section, another thing is, and this is generally for the entire resume as well, you want to make sure from a formatting standpoint and generally you're being very consistent in your approach. Right now, as I see, the first experience has 1 bullet point. The second experience has 4 bullet points. The third experience had 2 bullet points again. So I think that just comes across as very not professional at all. And I think a lot of the alignment in this resume and formatting, I think, can be really worked upon to make it more easier for a recruiter to read the resume. Most individuals read from left to right. So I always recommend resumes that allow for that kind of a format instead of top to down. Just psychologically, it's not the best experience for the other person. And our job whenever we apply to resumes or to jobs in general is to make sure we make it as easy for the other person to hire us or move us to the next level, right? So why create challenges for ourselves by not putting things in the way that they would prefer, right? So that's the other thing I would mention. The third thing, kind of building onto something Abdullah had hinted towards, is since someone's spending such limited time on your resume, you want to make sure things that are very relevant to that particular job you're applying for are standing out in your resume in some way. So for example, you could either bold the key skill sets that are called out in the job description here. You could either put certain metrics in italics, right? So that when someone looks through it, it's very clear for them to kind of identify those skills and in their head have this checkbox that goes check, 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 check. I think that's often helpful that I've noticed a lot of recruiters have mentioned. They found that easygoing. And I know it ties into the skill-based section that's here. Right now, I think this section is a lot to consume for someone. And I think you would think this adds value, but I think it maybe takes value away from it because I think it leaves the other person feeling quite overwhelmed because not all of these things may be applicable for that particular opportunity you're applying for. So it's very important to also be prioritizing your experiences to make sure they're as relevant as needed to that particular role. Otherwise, I think by giving people too much, you end up losing your credibility and your value. And again, as I said, I think I wouldn't have a separate section altogether for skills necessarily, but I think in terms of a sectioning perspective, I might have like education first, but not spend like, even in their education section here, there's a long description around each education type. I don't think you need to be sharing everything, even if you just share your like, most recent educational, like your bachelor's degree, and if you did a master's, just in one line where you graduated from. But in that education section, what I like to see more of is also people calling out, were there any specific courses that they took on which are very relevant for this particular job? Were there any specific projects that they did which had high outcomes? Calling it out in that section itself so that you're not taking up too much space. And I mean everything in just bullet points, literally. So let's say there would be 1 bullet point for skills, and you would put all the skill sets with commas right in that 1 line or 2 lines for it to go over. Right? So that's one thing I also recommend. And if there are any sort of recognition or any competitions as well that you've been a part of, call it out again in that education section, right? Because the assumption people make is that most of these experiences you've gained have happened during the period you were getting yourself educated in those universities or colleges. So always helpful to show people that you've done more than just studying, because as we all know, most people today are graduating with more number of master's degrees, more bachelor's degrees, etc. So what's so different about you graduating from that same university like 10,000 other students? So you got to put in something that makes you a bit more different than others and creates that more value add for yourself. And I think last but not the least, because I know I may be going over time, is also making sure, I think, in terms of the positioning of things, like towards the end, also having a section that can individualize and personalize things to yourself, because people want to hire people at the end of the day, not robots, right? So they want to know other things that they can personally connect with you on. So I feel like towards the end, having a section, I know someone had a section on activities, but maybe having a section called extracurriculars, I think is always extracurriculars and language is always a good call out at the end, because I think language usually tends to be one of the things people look for, especially if you're working in global companies that involve you working with diverse teams. And the second piece is, I think, in extracurriculars. I remember once a recruiter told me that they hired someone because they had, while in university, organized TEDx for their university. And that showed them that this person has great interpersonal skills alongside technical skill sets. So, like even simple things like those are important. So I think calling those out. So those I would say would be the initial main pieces, but I'm happy to there's a lot more, but I'm happy to get into details maybe later on.
Thank you very much, Ritika. We are going to move on to the next one just due to time. So for the third one, who was the panelist for?
Yeah, that's me.
Perfect.
Yeah, okay.
You can go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I guess I'll just talk about this from a high level perspective first. So maybe looking at the sections first. As the other panelists have highlighted, work experience is like probably the most critical thing that someone who's looking at your resume wants to see. So yeah, putting the work experience at the top could really help to elevate your resume. Also looking at consistency. So I noticed in general, a big thing about this resume, we'll have some sections, for example, our like work experience, specifically the backend software developer, I think was really well done. But then if we scroll down a bit, we can see how like the points get more sparse, and it seems like most of the effort was actually put into this very first point. Some things that it did well, for example, was the use of metrics. So, for example, like reducing test time by 35%, increasing unit test coverage, for example, by 15%, gives kind of like a tangible metric that your employer can look at to see how this person had an impact at the last place they worked at. So I really like that in this backend software example, but it seems like we don't see those same things in the later points. So maybe putting the same amount of effort from that first section there into the rest of the resume would be great to see. Looking at our next point here, so I would think reducing our barrier to like viewing these projects specifically could really help to elevate this resume. So for example, the time token project here was a winner at the Delta hackathon, right? But having a link or specifically a hyperlink, something that your employer could easily click on to see what the project was actually doing could be pretty important. Otherwise, they may not take the time to actually go and seek out the project. So we want to reduce the barrier to viewing like these projects and things of that sort to just make it as easy as possible for the person viewing your resume, essentially. Also, I would say bolding is really important. So as we've heard many times now, like the recruiter does not spend a lot of time looking at your resume, right? They're going through many resumes at any given point, so you really want yours to stand out. So I think by bolding key or essential points, that can really help to highlight the best parts of your resume, right? So when you're scanning it, you want them to, for example, look at a metric that's important or highlight, for example, if we're looking at this time token project here, that we are a winner, right? So you want to make that stand out from the rest of the resume. I guess we can go into specific sections. So if we go into the first, at the top. So it's great that you highlighted your high GPA. You could also talk about if you excelled in any courses specifically, that would also be a good thing to highlight here as well. So I know, for example, in McMaster Computer Engineering, 3DQ5 is an essential course for any computer engineer. And if you scored well in that, that could help give you an edge over the other applicants for the same role, right? So highlighting any courses that you excelled in would be great as well. On the right-hand side here, you can see this, like the languages and frameworks are kind of in the education section. So I guess maybe that's to save space or to be more compact, but maybe we can move that into a different area because that doesn't necessarily belong with education. And I also think like highlighting your skills as well should primarily be done through your experience. So yeah, maybe that can be moved to the bottom because it's less of a priority. Going into the work experience, looking at that first point there, it seemed like it was just kind of tagged on, but you're not really saying what you're doing essentially. So maybe I would wait till you've actually gained some experience in that particular role before considering even putting it on your resume. I think your second experience as a back-end software developer was really well done, and I think that should be kind of the benchmark that the other experiences should be following. I noticed one thing you talked about developing and deploying RESTful APIs. You could maybe talk about what stack you used, so that a recruiter can see if your skills are relevant to what projects they're building. So that's a big point to highlight there. And if we go down to our next experience, full stack developer. Yeah, so maybe including more metrics. This seems more of like, it's good that you highlighted the stack that you used. I would say, for example, that third point there, using Jira to manage an agile workflow. I mean, if you're working in web dev, you're most likely using an agile workflow. So I'd say instead of like just trying to increase the length of your resume, maybe focus on keeping it concise and straight to the point, right? Some of these maybe have, I would say, is too verbose. Like you're maybe just trying to like fill a word count or something. So maybe focus on saying, like trying to convey your point across in less words, I think would be actually more beneficial in this case. Yeah, if we scroll down. Yeah, so it says that you are a winner of that hackathon there. Maybe you could also, for example, give a metric like how many people were you competing against? Would kind of, for example, put that into perspective, how big of a competition this actually was. Looking at your ML experience there. Maybe including some metrics, for example, on how this ML project actually performed, maybe in terms of accuracy. You kind of talked about how you built the model, but you're not really talking about how it performed. So that is also important to include those kind of metrics too. And finally, this stock simulation web app. I guess, yeah, it's more of a personal project, but I guess it's still ongoing. Maybe you can like maybe convey like who would actually be using this. It seems like you've kind of just worked on it on your own, but no one has really tried it out. So maybe wait till it's actually complete before you want to consider putting it on your resume. And looking at the last section there, so we have the 2 points there. I don't really like how you switch the perspective. So you use like a third person perspective for your whole resume and then switch to a first person for these last two. I think you should keep it consistent to improve your credibility. And you can also talk about what you actually did in these clubs. It seems like it was just kind of tagged on there at the end. So I would say it's important to note that like whatever you're putting on your resume, it shouldn't just be like an afterthought. So you could consider trimming down this resume, but for each point that you have, ensuring that you have good metrics and consistency, I think is like the biggest takeaway for this resume. All right,
Sounds
thank you.
great.
Yeah,
That
thank you
was a
very
great
much.
feedback.
We're gonna move on to the next one, resume 4.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear
Yeah.
you.
Hi, yeah, sorry, I'm still not home. Could we actually, I'm the panelist for number 4. I have my notes at home. Is it possible to move on and then come back to 4 after?
Yeah, that's totally fine. Yeah, we'll move on
Perfect,
to,
thank you so much.
I believe it's Abdullah.
All right. I kind of made notes on my own sheet here. Is it okay if I share my screen, or we could continue with the same
Oh,
flow?
yeah,
Sure, we can do that. Yeah. Stop.
All right.
Edit stop.
Do you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
Perfect. All right. Well, everybody already touched on very, very important things. Let's see. Okay, I'll start on the left. I'm not a big fan of how this is formatted, but I'm not a stickler for formatting. I kind of look for what's important. I looked at this, I wasn't sure what they were applying for, so I looked at this as it was a co-op student applying to join GeoTap, for example, right? So I was like, education, still fresh. Again, scanning quickly to try to make decisions. Scholarship awards, okay, good to know. Technology, and looking at the list here, I'm like, oh, okay, Java, Python, MATLAB, sounds good. Then Word, Excel, PowerPoint, come on, given. Google Docs, Forms, no need, don't waste your time. And then other, and then started reading this. I'm like, this is all over the place. Is it software? Is it languages? Like, what are they trying to tell me here? Right? So again, reading this, the impression I'm getting started wavering. I'm like, okay, inconsistency. Now I'm going up to skills. Experienced in Java, Python, MATLAB. I was like, okay, I saw that already. With a demonstrated ability to develop efficient and robust solutions. I'm like, don't tell me, show me, right? So again, everybody has talked about that. Like this is not important to put up here. It's a waste of words. And then points 2 and 3 talk about basically the same thing, that they have strong written communication skills and presentation and so on. Merge them together, get to the point. Dedicated team player with proven ability to collaborate effectively, fostering positive and productive team environment. Don't underestimate how important this message is, right? So something that we've heard a few times with the other panelists is, what does your resume say about you, right? And nobody wants to hire a selfish person that is only out for themselves. Is your resume. Also, don't pretend to be a team player, be a team player, right? But yes, something like this is important to see somewhere on your resume. And then again, other people have mentioned this, like if you're using a certain tense, if you're using a certain way, be consistent. Develop versus developing, you know, how are you wording your things? It shows consistency, it shows that you're paying attention to detail. I started looking at the experiences. I won't stick too much to what the experience is. Again, like this whole section is telling me what the program is about. Tell me what you did, not what the program is about. Here's another one, worked with patients to prototype a bag to better suit their lifestyle. You know, what's important here? Did you do some planning, design? I saw the prototyping, right? Like, tell me what's important about this experience. What came out of it? What did you do? Assistive medical device, created Bilbert, which I assume is the name of the device. I don't need to know what you named your device. An automated medication, you know, dispensing robot using Raspberry Pi and Python. Very nice. You know, here's some nice stuff. Was the lead developer role using sensors and motors? I was like, you know, highlight things that you think will be use the words to get your message across. Yeah, I read this one and I didn't know what to make out of it. So partnering with a startup based on McMaster University's prestigious innovation incubator. This initiative is funded by McMaster Experience Ventures. What are you trying to tell me here? You know, again, it's don't tell me what the program is. Like it's what did you do? Sorry, this is a roast. I feel like I'm roasting too hard. So I got to the second page and I put a reminder here. Like, first page says a lot. Put important things there, right? At this point, I'm probably not interested in moving on, right? So not many people will get to a second page. Focus on your first page. Your first page is important. You know, I kept reading here and saw some things. I tried to highlight kind of what I thought was interesting. So there's some nice to haves. But I wanna kind of show you guys this. So I wrote some notes as others were talking, just to kind of give you guys a summary. So what are the things that people have been saying? What is the common theme? And I tried not to repeat them, right? So resumes are not paper anymore, right? Add hyperlinks, make it enrich it in some way, shape, or form. We're not reading this on a piece of paper. We're reading this on a computer. It's going through systems. Make sure your LinkedIn is updated. Definitely people are checking LinkedIn. Does it pass the initial filters? This is what I mean by it's not just people. Sometimes you're applying for a job. That system may use keyword filtering to make sure that you're applying for a relative job that is your resume is relative to the position you're applying for. There could be thousands of resumes. Not all of them are going to get looked at. If you're not catering your resume to the job, you're not going to pass the first step. So no human's going to look at this. Pay attention to detail. Use consistent wording, alignments, the flow of your resume. You know, say more with less. I cannot stress this enough. This is a negative. I used to teach at college, and you know, I get it, but the real world, less is more. Get to the point, right? In school, you try to like buff up. You need to get to X number of words to pass your assignment or whatever. This isn't the case in the real world. Say what's important. Try to get to what's important as fast as you can. Be concise and to the point. What does resume say about you as a person? Are you well-rounded? Are you competitive? Are you a team player? You know, read your own resume, have someone else read it for you. Try to get, you know, ask yourself these questions. Put experiences first, include metrics and what impacts your contributions made. Again, I'm just summarizing what the previous panelists have said to try to hammer in those really important points. And pop out the things that you want to highlight. Like it was said, use bolds, underlines, italics, whatever it is. If I'm going to scan it very quickly, what are the things that should pop out at me as I'm scanning it? That's it for me, and I'll pass it back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Abdullah.
Yeah, it's kind of great
who
roast.
is for resume 4?
I think he might be getting home yet.
Oh, is Mateo here
Yeah,
for
sorry, I am still here. I'm still getting home.
Okay, anyways, no
We'll
worries.
do is there number 6?
Yeah, there
Yeah.
is. So
Okay, then I'll go last. Yeah, sorry about that, guys.
no worries, no worries. So we have Elston for resume 6. Oh, this looks like my resume. You can go ahead, Elston, if you're here.
Yeah, can you go and share it?
Oh,
on
yes.
screen?
Sorry about that. Next one. Perfect. You can go ahead whenever you're ready.
Awesome. Okay, so initial kind of takeaway was that it's pretty long. I think this is like a 2-pager and it's dense. It's very clearly going for AI something. And so I was like, okay, so maybe I can read a little bit more about it. I think the highlights is something that was mentioned earlier in previous reviewers' feedback. I think my own feedback is that get rid of it. McMaster loves to tell you to put highlights in there. I've never seen it be useful, and I think you can actually show rather than tell, so you can probably show through the roles and experiences that you have in order to be able to say that, hey, you do have these experiences to get jobs in these fields and these positions, and it again, you don't need to say you publish research. There's a whole section that shows your research publications. So you don't necessarily need to have all of these points. All of these points are in your resume. Additionally, I can see that you just started in September for your master's, but then also your coursework kind of doesn't make any sense. Did you cover all of these in different courses that you're taking? Because you just started. Realistically, it would make sense to not cover this and just kind of have this bullet point of education at the very bottom or something to kind of get it out of the way. Because right now it's probably best you kind of highlight on your work experience. The technical skills section, again, I think needs to also move. It's kind of got like a mid-priority. The reason why I say this is because technical skills are good for when you're trying to basically get your resume parsed through online parsers and making sure that you can pop out as an applicant that has key skills that they're looking for. So if you're going through an automated system, this is good. This will kind of, fit all those keywords. It's almost like a keyword checking thing that you have everything that the job requires, and how well you match the description of the job is kind of done through this kind of area here on the resume. But I think right now what I would be more interested in is the work experience. So probably moving that again, a bit more down, above education, but below work experience. And really all that means is that work experience shifts up to the very top of the resume, which is important. One thing that I will note as well is I am a one-pager. I think I've strongly seen that if you're trying to go for international co-ops, if you're trying to go for things like startups in the US, Apple, Tesla, etc., they're more going to want to see the one-pagers that are either going to wow them and make sure that you have everything to say in one page. If you can't really get your resume down, there should be a very good reason. And honestly speaking, I'm looking at this 2-page resume and I can't be convinced that it can't be summarized down to 1 page. A lot of this is filler, and a lot of this doesn't really need to be there. So for example, areas of interest in your technical skills, that is not something you need to have. You already have used the word machine learning like 10 times in this resume. You've shown you can do computer vision on this resume. It doesn't need to be here. It just kind of goes and shows me that like, okay, you're kind of wasting space on this resume, and it kind of just makes me feel like I need to then scroll to the second page to get to the more important things on your work experience, because your work experience continues to the second page, which is, again, very kind of annoying. Additionally, it's kind of weird with your work experience. I'm not sure whose this is, but maybe this is a thing specifically to country, but for example, if we're looking at some of the jobs, there's some jobs that are just like 1 month. So I think the project trainee at New Rapsis Technology is like June 2023 to July 2023. Like if you're getting paid for that, I don't know exactly how much development can be in a month. I've done internships that were 4 months long, and I think that I barely scraped the surface of a project that I was supposed to make, or like I made a project, but it was limited in scope, and I think that it needed to grow a lot more in order to be able to be useful by external teams, etc. If it's not just like closing a small ticket or two. If you're doing software, that is, software is much faster time cycles. But going from this, it kind of shows to me that like, I don't really know, I can't be convinced that this project was actually like real work experience. It might have just been like a little touch and go. So it's kind of a assumption on my behalf, but you have to also think about the fact that I'm not the one looking at these resumes, and other people who are having hundreds of resumes also are kind of making the same assumption. They're kind of wondering how much experience can you really get in a month. And then similar story, like the other ones overlap almost. So if you look at the semiconductor lab, it's overlapping work experience of the project trainee. So I'm not sure if this was like a rotational work program where you went to different companies, or how exactly this worked. Because to me, I'm looking at this and I'm confused. I'm more confused by the overlapping times than actually reading the bullet points, which is not something you want to ever hear. And I think overall, you can actually get rid of some of these things. So I think honestly, you can probably get rid of like 3 to 4 work experiences, just because, again, I think that they're like way too short in scope. And I think you've already done a good job in other places on your resume to highlight the fact that you do have experience with CV, you do have experience with transformer-based ML things going on. So you don't really need to be able to unnecessarily repeat it a million times, especially when you got better points to highlight. Again, that's what I'm saying. Sometimes it's even good to remove work experience if you think it's just kind of repetitive and you think it's less worthy to be taking up that space. Again, everything is really focusing on the space in your resume. If we move to the second page on projects, I think the project section as well is good. I think there are projects there that are interesting, but I also think that some of the earlier projects in 2022 can also kind of just be removed off the resume. You're trying to go for Node.js, Firebase, HTML, CSS. Like some of these ones, they're less important, less impactful to your ability to get a role. Remove the things that don't care. It's all about skinning that cow, and you need to be able to remove all of the filler. Again, I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at filler. That's the easiest way I can say it. Sorry, I got a Slack message. Volunteer work experience, I think is great to have, but again, it's pretty long. And at this point, I think you can highlight the volunteer work experience as collaboration and being able to set some things up. You can easily highlight that in your current work experience. But if you really wanted to highlight something, you can. Just make sure that you kind of pick the ones that you want to highlight. Again, going all the way back to 2022 is less important when it comes to volunteer experience. I will say that. Recent publications, really good to see. What I would do is I would organize it from most latest to least latest. Right now, your 2022 is basically your highest one. But I think, in fact, your 2024 is something that I was like, oh, cool, facial recognition of DNNs. Like, that could be really cool to at least highlight. So, again, ordering of your resume is also kind of important to make sure that they can see what your most recent workings are. So they're able to say, do you currently have work experience, and are you currently working on something that's relevant to the job? This is kind of a controversial thing, but certifications is something that is not necessarily useful. I think if you have formal education, you can definitely get rid of a lot of the certifications, like because you're doing basically a master's in computing and you're doing your master's in AI. The idea that you're taking up space in your resume to say that you got a certificate of a nano degree is kind of, again, wasting space. Again, all of this is to say that you want to be able to give someone the shortest amount of time in order to look at a resume and understand exactly what you know, how you know it. You don't want to make them feel like they're reading a bunch of filler. You're filibustering in your resume effectively, which is kind of just tedious and annoying to read through. Remove the things that don't really care. I don't personally think that certifications really help that much given this resume. This resume is pretty good. Not gonna lie, you have get links, you have really nicely formed points. I do think that some points are a little bit too long. I do think you can cut down on those points as well. But it's a lot of good work experience. Overall, I think in general, if you were to give me this resume, I'd say it's pretty good. But I would tell you that you can go back and do better because there's just a lot of filler here.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. I actually had a question, not just for you, but for any of the panelists. Wait, hello, can you guys hear me online? Okay.
Yep.
So I agree with Elston that I think one-page resumes are most of the time better than 2 pages. But I think this one kind of mentioned as well. How important do you guys think 2-page resumes are for people going for master's positions or like full-time positions as master's students? Do you think they should still limit themselves to 1 page, or should they look for pushing it to 2 pages just so they can fit in more projects and work experience that might actually be important for the position?
I think I will kind of just reiterate my point. I think anybody can realistically go down to one-pagers. I've seen people with 20 years work experience in the field and like done their masters, done their PhDs. They're able to do one-pages. Granted, this is their resume, not their CV. So their CV includes everything, including all of their work, all of their publication, all their journals, the articles that they've written in, et cetera. And those can be 18 pages long. That's not something you should be applying to at jobs. What you need to be able to say to a person is, in the quickest formal sense, are you able to provide value? And if you can't do that in 1 page, you need to really think about what you're putting on that page.
All right, sounds good. Thank you very much. I think Mateo, were you able to get home safe?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry.
Perfect.
I think Abdullah and I both had a raised hand. I
Oh
guess
yeah,
to
sure
comment
thing.
on that point. I'll just really quickly say that I actually want to mirror what Elston said. I I have never seen a resume that needed to be 2 pages that didn't have filler in it.
Okay.
Like I even like with my own resume, I've always had projects. Like I filled it out basically with my work experience, if I had any. If I didn't, then I had projects. And as I had internships, I knocked off the projects as I had internships, basically. So you want to keep that like because at that point, like work experience is always going to be more important than your personal projects. So every time you have a work experience, you knock off a project, and eventually you get to a full resume. Only when you're at the point where you can have like enough experience, which I don't think any person that is going like that is a student currently has like enough work experience to completely fill the entire resume. Then you want to actually just start cutting down on the points on some of your oldest or like at least the least relevant jobs. Yeah, and Abdullah, I'll let you also comment.
Thank you. Ritika also has her hand up. I'll be very brief, but I'm not a stickler for 1 page versus 2 page, and I think the person reading your resume is definitely going to have an opinion. The reality is luck of the draw, honestly. In my opinion, when I look at it, I'm more concerned about how fast can you convey a message to me, and how fast can you get to a point. It can be 2 pages and not as densely populated as this. I want to read it. I want to get the point, right? If you're grabbing my attention, you're getting the point across, you've succeeded. It's the 1 page, the 2 page, irrelevant to me. But that's just my opinion. Ritika?
Thank you. I think another quick point I was also going to mention is I think when we even talk about 1 versus 2 page, I mean, if you have a ton of relevant experience, which makes sense, go ahead, put it in those 2 pages. But I think it comes down to relevance of experience. It's not about the quantity, but I think it's rather about the quality of the experience and its relevance to the particular job you're applying for. So I think one of the things I've always had people say is when you add too much, even in your 1 pager, just to fill it out, if you start putting in experiences that may not even be relevant, you're actually going to, in many ways, end up compromising your credibility for that particular job instead of adding value. Because I know to us, stereotypically, it feels like quantity means equal to better outcomes, but that's not really the case. So I think just in general, that approach is helpful when you're choosing which experiences to add into your resume as well.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, everyone, for that. Mateo, we're going to very quickly go over your resume before we move on to our next portion.
Sounds good.
Go
I
ahead.
have my notes here, so I should be able to blaze through it as fast as I can. Cool. Could you pull it up, or is it?
Oh, yeah.
I can't see it.
Can you see my screen?
We could see it
Not-
before. Yeah. No.
Yeah, not right now.
Okay, let me reshare it.
No, I can see it.
Oh, you can see it? It might be on my end then.
Okay.
Okay, I can also do it blind. I do have my a second copy of it on here.
You want to share your screen?
Sure, I can do that. Yep.
Yeah.
You're gonna see like the marked up thing. But that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay, I'm on a Mac and it's asking me that. Give me 1 sec.
Okay, no worries. I have one too. Is it right here?
Okay, sorry. It crashed when I tried to do it, so I'm gonna try it one more time. And then if not, then well, that sucks. Okay, it looks like it's coming up now.
Yeah, we can see it as well.
Perfect. Okay. Sorry, there's so many technical things. Okay. Anyways, firstly, thank you for having me here. So I'm gonna start with at the very top. Let's see if I can actually make this small. Okay. Computer engineering co-op student. You do not need this in your title. This is 100% you already have your education right here and it says that you're taking a computer engineering degree. Take that right off. Your name should be front and center. Also, where are the links? There's not even a LinkedIn link here. I guess they're up on here, but you have to make sure that they're clickable. So, okay, sorry. Actually, yeah, they're right up on there. Next, so the work experience. I think that should be at the top. I think that mirrors a lot of the kind of advice that was already given. But the first thing and the most important thing should be the work experience. The education is just a checkbox that recruiters are looking for. It's are you doing a degree? Yes. I don't know, 5,000 other people that are also doing it. So put it at the bottom. You're a dime a dozen, in terms of McMaster computer engineers. So we want to see what makes you different. Nitpicking the education system or the education part, we see that there's the awarded $3,000 in engineering excellence. That is not necessary. Everyone gets that who's above 95. That does not set you apart. Next, we have the courses. I like that you added the courses. The only thing that's weird is that you have an in progress thing. You can just mark them as completed, because you're going to be joining a company at the end of your semester, not halfway through. So just mark them as completed. And if they ask you about it in an interview, tell them that you are currently learning that stuff. So yeah. Next, so the skills. This should also go to the bottom with education. This should not be up here. These are just kind of keywords that any, I guess, resume parsing ATS system would it's looking to grab those words. So yeah, that goes to the bottom. That's just another checkbox. MS Office, G Suite, yeah, don't have these in here. Everyone can use those things. That does not set you apart. And then a small nitpicky thing is that you put Arduino in the electrical thing. Arduino is not an electrical, I guess, like a double E like framework. It's like a software framework on top of like an embedded system. So it kind of makes you look like you don't know what you're doing if you put this in the electrical. So just make sure, like, use this to make sure that you vet your resume to make sure that everything you put on there is stuff that you know. Because if they ask you about that, you won't be able to explain it. So, and they look dumb in the interview. So yeah. Uh, yeah, so work experience, like I said at the top. Um, this NDA EV project is where the name of the company should have went. I mean, it's vague on purpose because of that NDA, but it should at least say if it's like a startup or if it's like you're working on some like company. If you can't even say the company, just like put like the location, like make sure it's like actual work. Uh, next, oh yeah, okay. So avoid acronyms in the resume. What is the MVVM design pattern? I don't know. I'm a technical person. A recruiter will probably not know. If I guess this is something that if it's like in the job description as a acronym, then sure, but I would always err on the side of adding more information. Also, a small nitpick is that you have this entire line down here that's only occupied by testing of the app. You could like expand this out and make it so that you can explain what it is, just to like fill in that space there. Um, yeah, and then this line here talks about just like using like about actively participating in a team and using sprints. I think this can be cut down to one line. It does not need to take up two. Like teamwork and I guess sprints, like everyone uses sprints, but teamwork is important. I'm glad that you outlined that here in the resume, but definitely try to cut that down to like one line. Yeah. Next. So, oh, also there aren't many numbers. So you can see that in some of these experiences down here. This was actually this one was great. You added numbers like repaired 100 plus computers, worked with 100 plus clients, cut customer wait times by 33%. That is good. You should have done that for these like work experience things up here. I don't see a single metric on here. It could be stuff like lines of code. It could be stuff like if, like for example, this RESTful API, how performant is it? What kind of like functionality does it I guess expose? Like how does it talk? It talks about a seamless communication. How does it talk between the app and the server? You know, that kind of thing. So be more specific. Um, yes, and then okay, so projects. This is actually just a small nitpick. Upwards is not like you shouldn't be using the name of the project. I know this was brought up previously, but you should use a friendlier name. This is a text-based recreation of Upwards, which is a similar game to Scrabble. You should just say like a text-based Scrabble game and then say that you did it in Java. That would make it a lot easier. Also, I saw this small little nitpick here where you didn't finish the sentence, developed a simple text-based user. I think it's supposed to be user interface. You got to make sure that you proofread your resume, like front to back. Like these mistakes cannot be made when you're trying to like impress a recruiter or a hiring manager. It shows that you're lazy and that you didn't double check your resume. Okay, and then I guess some more general comments for this electrical team member thing. Why do you have an electrical project on a software resume? So you see that you created an XT30 to an XT60 adapter, which is a cool thing to do, and you had to like adhere to specifications and that kind of thing. But why do you have this project on a software resume? Or rather, why do you have a software work experience in a electrical or mechanical resume, which is what your teaching assistant thing, I guess, talks about here with their gear ratios and mechanical design. So you really want to tailor your resume to whatever, uh, I guess, what the role will be. If it's a software developer role, stuff like this, while cool, will not help you that much. And someone else who has a software-based project doing something maybe a little more relevant to the role will be chosen over you. So, yeah. Also, yeah, so any certification, so certifications, any like any of these projects, and the extracurricular stuff, there are no links anywhere on this resume. It would have been really nice to be able to click on the link and to be able to see the project just as a form of verification, but also like like I guess the other roasters have commented in the past, it's like the 21st century, you should be able to like click on these things and see what's going on. It's not like a paper resume. Oh yes, and then more projects. So I see that you have like computer service technician and this teaching assistant job, which aren't very relevant. I mean, they're work they are work experience. However, if you're going for a software role, this isn't that relevant. You should add more projects. If you have this empty space, either fill out more of this like Android app developer work experience, or um, add more projects. Like the whole point, like it's so easy for students to get just ignored because they are all they do is they go and they study at school and they don't do any like projects outside, or they don't get involved with like clubs. They don't get involved with like design teams. Those are some great things to put on your resume. So I say I wholly encourage the person who has this resume to go out and join a design team, join maybe a leadership role in a school club. That would be able to, that is a much better thing to put on a resume rather than this computer service technician or this teaching robot or teaching assistant thing. And yeah, sorry if I was a little harsh, but that's it for me.
Thank you very much, Mateo. I actually have one last question for all the roasters before we sort of move on. So I'm gonna reshare my screen actually.
Yeah, go ahead, take over.
So with the 6 resumes, we saw 6 very different resumes, but a lot of people, myself included, use sort of this format that we saw, I believe, with latex format. I think it was Elston that went over. My question is, how important do you all think it is to customize your resume to not use this format versus like just do it as quickly as you can and try to get the main points in using this format? Because I myself have used this format successfully, thankfully. So yeah, is it really important to like be creative and not go with just the normal latex format, or does it not really matter? Whoever has their hand up can just go. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Mateo, you can go ahead, and then maybe Bimal after.
Bimal, did you want to go first? You can feel free to go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think a similar question was asked earlier, and I think Abdullah answered that it is very reader dependent. Some people love the formatting, some people absolutely hate it. Like you said earlier, the important part is to get the points across as quickly as possible. So, for what that's worth, Mateo?
Yeah, I'm gonna, I guess, second that basically and say that basically just run your resume through an ATS checker software because that's the only important thing. As long as the information is there and it can be extracted by whatever ATS software the recruiter is using and it doesn't garble up the text. Like it doesn't, like for example, it's very common with these 2-column resumes to have garbled up text because the ATS parser can't like determine where like it doesn't have a color a distinction between colors. So like that software in biomedical engineering, it might just like spill into the possess strong written verbal communication skills, which you don't want to happen. It's a lot easier with a like 1-column resume. But as long as the information is all there. Like I run a 2-column resume actually. I just made sure that it works with ATS.
Sounds good. Ritika, you have your hand up as well.
Yes, I think the quick thing I was going to mention is I know this session is obviously a lot about resumes, but I think one of the key pieces I want a lot of students to recognize and realize is like resumes is like just one part of the process as well, right? So I think when we even talk about formatting and optimizing these things, it's very industry specific. And I think it's also very subjective based on who's going to be checking your resume, which is what are the things that lie outside your control. But I think the way you could potentially be taking over that control is maybe hopping on calls with people in those industries who specifically might be checking your resumes as well, to really get a sense of what is it something that they prefer, and then individualize it to what they are looking for. Because I think, see, all of us are also sharing it through our own experiences, through the companies we have got into. So what I would recommend is also, whatever advice you get, personalize it based on the company you are going to be applying to, right? Because what may work very well when applying to Microsoft may not always be the best approach when applying to a company that's not as technical heavy, but is looking for people who have a balance of skill sets, both technical and to like interpersonal. So I think it really depends on those factors as well. Like I know at least a lot of the Deloitte, the KPMG, EY, McKinsey is like, their format is quite different than I've seen very, very technical roles need. So just keeping that in mind, as you approach things.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, I think now we're gonna move on to the second portion where we're gonna break out and everyone. Oh, first of all, I want to thank the panelists very much for all of their advice. We'll clap it up for them. Thank you for staying over time as well. Sorry about that. And yeah, so now we're gonna move on to the second portion. I'm gonna try to make breakout rooms for people online if they want to try to continue online. But for people in person, you can meet some of the in-person panelists that showed up, or just any of us upper years for any advice in general.
Oh, we got a raised hand, by the way. I think Abdullah wants to say something.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I was hoping somebody would ask this question, but I guess I'll just say it. Most of the time when people come to me and ask me about their resume, I think they're missing a key component, and that is the importance of connections, making connections, and getting the resume looked at to begin with. Unfortunately, too many of us don't. Maybe we don't get told that enough, but the reality is, applying through job postings that are randomly here and there and just being one of the thousands is the most difficult way to get a job. It is very important to connect with people at a human level, right? And when you make those connections, that is really the best way to get your resume looked at. And then when you make that human connection, the minor flaws in your resume can be overlooked, because at the end of the day, you are not your resume, you are who you are, right? And we want to get to know the person, right? So take opportunities wherever you can to connect with people genuinely, right? And then as you make these connections, the resume, the job application process will become easier, right? Just I don't know if other panelists want to add more to that, but just the importance of not just thinking of it as I gotta find all these jobs online and I gotta cater my resumes and just apply. I'll say this story about myself. I wanted to get a job at X company, actually the Geotab, where I'm at now, right? And I heard about the company, I liked the company, I wanted to work at the company. I had a LinkedIn account with credits to message people. I was just interested in working at this company. So then I used my credits to message people that work in this company that are around the same role that I was looking to apply. And I just had conversations with them to try to understand, the culture in the company, how it's working, just make a human connection. And then I applied. And funny enough, one of the people I applied with was actually the ones interviewing me. It's a coincidence. I don't know if it helped or not, but, sometimes when you talk to people, they can recommend you also internally in their system. And if they do that, if they accept to do that, they take your resume, they apply through in the internal process, you get through that very hard first step of, did it pass the algorithm? Did it pass the whatever? Just get to the interview, right? The whole point of the resume is to get you to the interview. And that connection is so much better even than your resume. So, yes, you need your resume, but make that human connection.
Thank you very much for that, Abdullah. We have broken out here in person, so it has gotten a bit loud. But for those who are listening, it was great advice, and I appreciate you giving the advice. I appreciate everyone for again coming out and giving all the advice. Again, I'm gonna make the breakout rooms. We have some stuff in the chat. Okay. All right, I'm gonna make the breakout rooms now for those who can continue online. If you have to drop out.
Know that what breakout room it is.
Exactly. And then if you have to drop out as well, feel free to do so. Thank you very much again. And